está escrito, mas el justo por la fe vivirá.
Let's pray. Father, truly how great you are. We thank you for your holy word, your wonderful word. Thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ. And Lord, even today as we consider how you are working not only here in our church, but also here in our nation. And may we also consider how you are working throughout the world, your creation. Truly, this is our Father's world, and we praise you for that. Lord, ask that this be a blessing this hour. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for the scripture reading, Caleb. The New King James has a few different words than yours does. Caleb is our speaker this morning. He's going to give us a presentation and tell us how his year went overseas in Peru. It was exciting, and I'm looking forward to hearing that. We have a nursery schedule for those of you who are on the nursery committee. It is out in the foyer, okay? And also, we're still putting together the schedule for the upcoming photo directory. Now, when you come in to have your photo taken, make sure you have your mask on when you're sitting in the foyer, which will be our waiting room. And then when you sit down for the sitting, you take your mask off, and then put it back on during your the sitting session where you choose if you want to purchase any photos, okay, any portraits. This is our last day for our special love offering, which is for the Coyazos, and their new they need a new washer dryer down there in Florida. So if you notate that on your envelope or on your check, put it in the offering plate, it'll go where it's supposed to go. And let's see, we do have a special business meeting on August 16th in place of Sunday school. That will be in place of the Sunday school hour at 6 p.m. to discuss and vote on a policy regarding COVID, which I'll explain later at the end of our service. Okay, you get a copy of that, so you can take that home and look at it. Okay. All right. Again, I'm just so glad to have Caleb here. I think I see Ian back there, and Ian's been quarantined since he's been stateside, and so he's now out and about. So we're glad to have him with us. All right, we're gonna sing off the screen. This is a hymn I don't know that well. All right, so my wife's gonna come up here and help me sing. Let's see, who else knows that? If you know Wherever He Leads, I'll Go. It's in our hymnal, but we haven't sang it in a long time. Do you know that song? Raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2, okay. Kent, do you don't know this? I haven't had you up here with me in a long time. I was going to have you come help. So, okay, well, that's okay. Naomi will help me with that. Let's stand over here, Naomi, so we can watch the screen. Let's all stand. hungering and thirsting to hear it like the rest. And when in scenes of glory, I sing the new song, 'twill be the old story that I have loved. So sing it out. I want to tell the story. That's definitely every missionary's prayer. It should be every Christian's prayer. Come at this time, present special music. Amen? Appreciate that. Well, like I said, it's just a joy to have Caleb home from Peru. He's going to come this time, and we're going to turn the pulpit over to him. He's going to give us an update on how that all went. We've been looking forward to this. Here you go, bud. Forward to her. And it's right there in front of you.
Buenos días, mis hermanos. ¿Cómo están a todos? Yeah, okay. Now that everyone's thoroughly confused, I'll start speaking English. Good morning. My name is Caleb Burkhow, as Pastor Dave was saying. I have been in Peru for the past year, in case you didn't know. And today I'm going to be talking about what I was doing. And I want to start off by saying thank you for being here. I hope everyone is having a good morning. I love those songs. I was able to pick those songs this morning, and I picked those songs because, well, missions minded at the moment because I was a missionary. But also it really gives a clear description of what our lives as missionaries should be. We all are missionaries in one way or another, and our lives should exemplify that, what we say and what we do. So we're just going to jump right in here. I was a student in a program with Baptist Mid-Mission, which is co-partnered with a couple different schools, called ARRIBA. ARRIBA is a missions internship program where I'm listed as a short-term missionary, and I went and lived in Lima, Peru for about a year, 11 and a half months-ish. The first part of my ARRIBA experience, I was in schooling. I was taking college classes for college credit. We had professors from the U.S. come down to Lima, Peru, and teach us classes such as I had a biology class, a history class, a language learning class, a enhanced communication class, a cultural anthropology class, and I think that was it. Oh, and obviously Spanish. So that was the first half of my time in Peru. The second half, I was completely missions-minded. I was working hand in hand with a missionary there in Lima, working in a church, teaching Sunday school, preaching, doing all of the things a missionary would normally do. It all started in May, where we had our orientation in Cleveland. This is the ARRIBA group. You have me, and then next to me is Lexi, Raquel, Hannah, Jenny, Cheyenne, and Scott. 2 guys and 5 girls. 4 people from Faith Baptist Bible College, 2 people from Bob Jones University, and then 1 person from Maranatha. Maranatha Baptist University? MBU? I think Maranatha Baptist University, yeah. So we all met in Cleveland, a lot of us for the first time. And we had our orientation. They were giving us a lowdown on what the culture was like, kind of like a pre-cultural anthropology class. We were there for a couple days, learning about the culture, learning about what our responsibilities were, what to do, what not to do. And up until this point, we basically knew nothing about where we were going to be living, who we were going to be living with, what we were going to be doing. I mean, obviously, I did know, I had an idea. I was going to be taking classes and serving as a missionary, but specifically didn't really know what was going on. So then we flew to Lima on a Saturday. We got in, I believe, Saturday night. Spent most of Saturday in the ARRIBA Center, which I'll be showing you a little bit later. And then Saturday night, they took us to live with our families. Now, for me, it was quite challenging because before I went to Peru, I had studied exactly 0 Spanish in my entire life. So I felt a lot like all of you just did a few minutes ago when the pastor, the missionary, walked up to the pulpit and started speaking a language I had no idea what he was saying. So you all have a little bit of an experience now on what it's like to live cross-culturally when you don't know what's going on. But it was very exciting. The first week, I'm greeting people and they're saying things to me and I don't know what's going on, and I'm just standing there and nodding and shaking hands very cheerfully. But eventually, as time progressed, we obviously got a lot better at Spanish. I'll get to that in a second. So our very first class was linguistics and language learning. It was very, very stressful. I don't know if any of you have ever taken module-style classes, but they take an entire semester of college credits, and they condense it down into 2-week classes. So not only was I in a completely foreign culture, living with people I could not communicate with, but I was also overloaded on homework. Normally college students have a lot of homework, but I was trying to do a whole semester in just 2 weeks. So it was a very, very stressful time. You're trying to spend as much time as you can with the family you're living with, but also at the same time you have like 5 hours of homework you have to do that night. So a lot of stress, a lot of staying up very, very late, very, very late in the night. Very exciting yet very crazy times. So our first week was language learning, where we spent a lot of time learning how to learn a language, how to communicate in a new language, learning all kinds of things about how your tongue works and how you make certain sounds, just random things like that you wouldn't consider when you're learning a new language. So it was very exciting, very challenging, difficult times, but very blessing to learn all that. The second week, the third week, we had a cultural anthropology class. It was very helpful to understand what the difference in your culture is. If you have never lived cross-culturally, if you never lived out of the country, if you never spent like a significant amount of time out of the country, it can be hard to understand what we're talking about when we say cultural differences. It can be anyway from the way you shake your hand, to the way you greet someone, to the way you look at someone in the street, body language. Literally everything could be different. And in a Latin American culture, it is quite different. Now, I want to take you quickly through my daily routine. So I got up in the morning at around, 7:30-ish, and I had a half an hour bus ride to the school where where we were doing classes. We were doing in Fetzer Christian Memorial School. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. It's a small mission school in Lima designed for Baptist mid-missionaries children, for all the Baptist mid-missionaries in Lima. So they were kind enough to let us use their facilities as some classrooms. So I had about a half an hour bus ride. Riding the bus in a different country is quite the experience. Sometime you should ask my mother about that. She thoroughly enjoyed that. So I had a half-hour bus ride. I arrived at the school, and then I had a 2-hour session one-on-one with a Spanish speaker. The first month or so were very challenging because I spoke 0 Spanish, and he spoke about 2 words in English. So trying to learn things, he was taking his paper out and going, "Pero, that's a dog." I'm like, okay, so pictures, one words like, how do you say was? You couldn't get to that I couldn't get how to learn how to say was for months. Because you're learning just from pictures, you're learning from, oh, look, that's the sun. Just like elementary things that you don't think about when you're learning a new language. It's pretty amazing. So that was from about 8:30 to 10:30. Then from 10:30 to 3:30, we had our English class. We brought we brought the professors down. The first class was language learning, and then we had, so 10:30 to 3:30, we had that class. Then from about 3:30 till whenever I went to bed, I was at home with my family, either trying to talk with them, the few Spanish words I knew, maybe practicing. I did a lot of practicing, random words, saying it over to them. They're like, no, the pronunciation's wrong. This is how you pronounce it. So they'd help me. And then I'd say it wrong again, and that's the process of learning. So lots of repetition, lots of working at it over and over again, but it came around. So that was our first class, and then our third class was biology. We got to take a trip to Huaraz, which is a mountain village in Peru. I spent the majority of my time in Lima, but we did take quite a few trips to the mountains, to Cusco, to Trujillo, which I'll talk more about later. Also want to apologize in advance. Before I left the field, I had a thing go on with my computer, and I lost all of my photos. So unfortunately, I have 5 photos in this entire slide today. I'm going to try and get a compilation later from all the other students, and I'm going to try and send that out in an email so you guys can see some of these things that I'm talking about. But I do want to apologize in advance for that. It's going to be mostly just me trying to talk through it. What actually happened. So Huaraz was a mountainous village. We went for a biology trip, so we were studying mountains and all kinds of things like that. We got to climb into the mountains higher than you can reach in the continental U.S., actually, than you can in the U.S., period. You can't even go to Alaska and get higher mountains. You actually have to go to South America to get as high as we were. So that was very exciting. It's high enough where you can't really breathe too well. It's very difficult to breathe. We got to swim in a glacial lake. That was pretty exciting. A whole bunch of really cool things that we got to go on there. I got to attend my first Peruvian wedding while we were there. It's very similar to how Americans do weddings. They try and actually, there's a few times in a Peruvian's life that you get really, really dressed up. And that's like weddings and maybe like graduations. And so it was really interesting to see like Peruvians in like their finest dress and all that. It was cool to see that, how marriage, how it's celebrated, how it is the unity of man and woman. And we look at it as the church, and they look at it as the same way. So it's interesting to see how, even though it's cross-cultural, they still they're still the same standards. Still as God is your standard. And that was another thing that it really broadened my horizon, this whole trip, of how big God truly is and how small we are as just a small group. We don't see the whole picture, but that even there, the focus is still on God, even in their marriages. I took another class, which was Prison Epistles. That was a 2-week class. Then we had a communications and multimedia class where I was learning to work with computers, learning to work how to do proper presentations for things like this. We had a lot of Spanish emphasis. We had a couple weeks in there where we didn't have classes, so we were just Spanish emphasis. So it was actually like 6 hours with just one-on-one with a Spanish speaker to really help us grow. Then we had our first big trip, which was to Cusco. It wasn't a school trip, it was an actual ARRIBA trip. We went to Cusco to work with some other missionaries. In Cusco, we got to see Machu Picchu. We got to travel into the mountains. We got to see some very small church plants. That was really exciting to see church plants outside of the U.S., where they were meeting in like a house that they had rented, and there's a few people coming, and it's on top of a mountain kind of in the back section of town where you wouldn't normally think there's going to be a church, but it's growing, so they're like, that's where we need a church. That's where the people are going, that's the section of town that's growing, so we're going to plant a church there. And it's exciting also to see that church is continuing to grow rapidly, very quickly. I'll talk a little bit more about my home church where I was staying in just a minute. We also had a Latin American history class where we learned, obviously, the history of Latin America. Then we had what I would consider the trip that influenced me the most is we went to Chinchil. Now, Chinchil is a very small village, probably like maybe 200 people tops, in the mountains of Lima. And in order to get to Chinchil, we took a 24-hour bus ride into the mountains, all-nighters. The bus never stopped other than for gas. And then we got off the bus, we got into a pickup / an all-terrain vehicle, and we had a 4-hour ride on a road that you could consider a road, but it was kind of like just driving across the mountains to a village where it was basically subsistence farming. There was very little running water, very little electricity. There was running water in the church building. We were grateful for that. But that was very enlightening for me. Just a short story, personal thing. We arrived in Chinchil, and we had been driving all night, and we got there very early in the morning. It was, I believe, like 7 in the morning when we got there to the village. So our director's like, all right, I know you guys have been in a bus for 24 hours, and then you just had another 4-hour car ride after that where you couldn't sleep at all. So you guys go to the houses where you're staying. They showed us where we were staying with the locals. And they're like, and you guys can take a nap, basically. Because we were all so exhausted, nobody could function. So I went in with my roommate, and we were trying to take a nap, and he fell asleep, and I hear a little knock on the door, and I'm like, what is that? So I look out, and there's these kids that are running around playing, and then I'm like, So I try to kind of go back to sleep, and then all of a sudden the kids are poking their heads through the window. I'm like, what are you guys doing? So I'm like trying to talk to them a little bit, but my roommate's right there sleeping. So finally I'm like, man, these kids really want to talk to me, and they want to kind of be with me, because I'm new and I'm different, I'm strange and I'm white. So I'm like, you know what? I really don't feel like getting out of this bed and going out there and trying to talk to these little kids. And then I thought to myself, but why am I here? I am here for those two kids out there that are driving me crazy right now. So I got up and I went out there and I started talking to them. I'm like, so what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, nothing. I'm like, well, you guys want to play a game? They're like, yeah. I'm like, so what do you want to play? They're like, I don't know. I'm like, well, that's not helpful. So I'm like, you guys know how to play, let's see, Pato Pato Ganso? They're like, yeah. That's Duck Duck Goose. So I'm like, all right, let's play some Duck Duck Goose. So me and these two kids, and then another kid came over. So we're playing Duck Duck Goose in the middle of the street, which is basically just a dirt hill going up. So we're playing Duck Duck Goose, and then a couple more kids show up, and we're still playing Duck Duck Goose. Then a couple other kids show up. And then finally, there's like 13 of us there in the middle of the street playing Duck Duck Goose. And I'm like, well, this isn't going to work. So we walked into one of the I believe it's the pastor's house. He's got quite an open area underneath his house. And we started playing Duck Duck Goose. And then we played some other games. And all that to say that moment was probably the most defining moment in my time there in Peru. Because I remembered and I thought about why I was there. And I wasn't there for myself. And up until that point, I had been there for others, but I had been in a lot of language learning, and I had been in a lot of classes, and I was fairly focused on being there for myself because I was taking classes. That was the idea. I was there for that. But then when we got to that point in my trip, I was like, you know what? It's not about me. It is about that small child out there who is here because I'm here, and he wants to talk to me. So that was really defining. And the rest of that week went amazing. We did a vacation Bible school style time there. I didn't get to speak to any children personally about the Lord, but I was able to teach in a group. They also speak a lot of Quechua, so it was very difficult to speak to the youngest ones because they didn't even speak Spanish yet. So that was a very endearing, very personal thing that really God showed me in that moment, that missions is not about you. It's about the people you're there to serve. And in October, we had our personal evangelism in a Hispanic culture, which was very challenging because that was our first full class in Spanish. The teacher of the class spoke in Spanish, and the entire class was in Spanish. So by this point, it was either know how to speak Spanish or you're going to fail the class. Which was exciting and really challenging. I did a lot of studying for that class. But the reason that class was so exciting was we actually practiced evangelism. It wasn't just we learned evangelism. We spent a few hours in the classroom learning evangelism. Then we walked out into the town, the area where we were staying, and we walked up to people and we knocked on doors and we talked to people in the market. Walked to people and said, "Hey, this is my name. Can I talk to you about Jesus?" And it's a very Catholic nation. Something like 91% of all the people there would say, I'm a Catholic. So you can try and talk to them about it, but they're just, I understand and I believe in God and all these things. So it can be very difficult to communicate with them, especially when you're not good at communicating in the language. So that was challenging. That was very growing for me to actually practice a lot of evangelism. Every day for 2 weeks we went out and we talked to people. So it was very good. And that ended right there about my first half of my ARRIBA experience, the classes and those few trips. I'm going to make a quick mention here of the family I stayed with. This is Joel and Carla Villegas and their son, Michael. We got there, Michael was 3 weeks old, I think. And by the time we left, he had just turned 1, a little past 1. So that was fun to go from watching like pretty much a newborn to having this kid that was starting to walk when we were leaving. It was fun and exciting. I got to do a lot of babysitting and stuff, so it was very good times. And that's Mickey right there. He's pretty cute. Now let's get to my second half of the highlights. This is the time where I spent a lot more time focused directly on the church and on ministry. Let's see here. In November, we had our first trip that wasn't for school, well, that wasn't during the school year, and as we went to Trujillo, which is the name of another city outside of Lima, about 3 hours away. No, I'm sorry, 10 hours away. The entire ARRIBA trip team went. We went up for a family camp at the local camp. So a lot of you guys know what Bayuca is like. It was very similar to that. We went up and we were kind of assistants because it was family camp, so we helped with just about anything that needed to be done. We participated. I helped out a lot with a lot of different things that were going on. Helped out a lot with kids. We taught kids classes. I was an assistant in that, teaching kids classes. We came back and then we had Thanksgiving with the missionaries. Thanksgiving in a different culture is pretty different because they don't obviously celebrate Thanksgiving like that because that's an American holiday. So it was interesting to get our turkey and our ham and all that stuff for Thanksgiving, which is something that they don't normally have. December started, and then I went to work at that same camp in Trujillo. I went to assist one of the missionaries there doing construction. I helped him build a tower so they could do you stand on the top, a zip line, that's the word. I helped him not install the zip line, but prepare the tower that was there with the zip line. That was a good, exciting time. I got to apply what I had learned in the years past with construction and stuff and help him out a lot there. Then we had what I would consider another very impactful time in my life was pastor's camp. So all the pastors in Lima and pretty much in all of Peru, we ended up having 150 pastors and their wives and families. And they all came to one camp in Lima, and we were able to minister to those pastors. It was very exciting for me because I was working very closely with the director, so I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off most of the week. I was able to do a lot of the sound. I was doing all the tech work and stuff for them. I was also spending the whole mornings with the students. So I taught a lesson for 5 days, which if you've never prepared your own lesson in another language, it's quite the experience. I was able to teach a lesson. I did a craft. I did games, and there was one other thing I believe that I had to do, and I had the 13 to 18-year-olds. So I had basically the teens. So I was teaching from the story of David, and that was very exciting for me. It was really, I am the kind of person that has a real burden for pastors and ministering to pastors and missionaries. So it was really exciting for me to be able to work for these pastors and to be able to minister to them. It was really also very great to be able to speak to all of those pastors, to see hundreds of different pastors' experiences, to be nourished by the Word and allow those pastors to be nourished by the Word there in Peru. And then toward the end of December, my mother and my brother came down to visit. That was very exciting. You'll have to ask them sometime about their experience in a culture where you don't understand what's going on. I was like, basically, just do what I tell you. And that was good. Christmas in Peru is something that's celebrated quite differently. Fireworks. Christmas actually starts at midnight on the 24th. Well, so I guess it's the 25th. But so you stay up all night, and then you stay up all of like Christmas morning until around 10 or whatever. Sometimes people take a nap, and then you eat like a big lunch on Christmas. So it's an all-night process, and it's also the same way in January. For New Year's, up all night. The entire sky is filled with fireworks and things like that. Then in January, I was able to go back to a camp in Trujillo, and I worked this was a family camp. That was very exciting, and I got to grow a lot in my Spanish. And then I also got to work at Niños Camp, which is a kids camp. That was quite the experience. I had never actually been a counselor for a whole week before. I had done weekends and things like that, but never a whole week. And trying to communicate with children in a language that you're not overly good at is difficult. But it was very growing for me. That was another thing that really showed me I'm here for them. I'm here to minister to those kids and not really minister to myself. So it was amazing. In February, we had a missionary camp where all the missionaries in Lima and mostly in Peru came to a camp in Lima, and it was very similar to pastor's camp. I was with the missionary kids teaching them. We did a vacation Bible school style week there with them as well. The last half of February, I spent 2 or 3 weeks doing construction in the upstairs of the church. Our church is 3 levels. We have the sanctuary on the first level. The second level is the classrooms. And then the third level is actually what would be the parsonage. And that was almost completely unfinished. So me and my roommate spent a number of weeks up there working on it with a construction guy. We were repairing things, doing a lot of painting, all kinds of things to prepare it for a new pastor. That was one of the exciting things that happened while I was there. Is the missionary who has been the pastor at that church for over 15 years, I believe, they were looking for a Peruvian pastor. So it was very exciting to see the candidation process in Peru. To see a new pastor come in, we did hire him, and he's now living there. I believe right now he's actually moved into the upstairs. So it was very exciting to see that transition of a missionary beginning to work with a Peruvian pastor, starting to train him. The missionary that was there, he's going to stay on for at least a year, maybe 2, to help the pastor get started in his work there, and then he'll completely hand it over. And those missionaries, they're also the directors of the program, Jim and Becky Carlton, are about ready to retire. So they were really looking for a pastor, and God provided one. He's fresh out of a seminary that is in Peru, Seminario de Peru. We were able to stay there for a couple days as well and get to minister to those students. So it was really a pretty great time. And then we have Corona. So my last part of March and the first part of April, we were pretty much quarantined in our house. I'm going to tell a quick story. Don't have a lot of time, but I want to tell this. This is a good story. So one day, we're like, all right, so they're pretty much about to shut down the borders of the country. We were supposed to go on a trip to the jungle. That got canceled because of the fact that borders were being shut down and they were restricting travel very heavily. Thankfully, to God, that was a blessing of God. We were supposed to leave on a Saturday. We would have got to that country, and then that Saturday night, the border closed. So that was the provision of God, completely 100%. We would have been stuck in a different country that wasn't Peru. We were traveling to, I don't remember what country it was in South America there. But we would have been stuck there, and that was a pretty rough town. It would have been very, very poor, probably living conditions. So God really, really spared us from that one. So it was in March. Baptist Mid-Mission contacted the director of the program and was like, I think they're going to close the borders of Lima tonight. Be ready. Tell the ARRIBA students to get ready. We're going to try to get them out tonight. So that was quite the shock. It was 10 o'clock in the morning, and our director calls us and is like, all right, guys, pack your bags, you're leaving today. I was like, wait, what? All of a sudden, we're all packing our bags, and it was like, the entire team was crying because we hadn't been able to see our churches, we hadn't been able to say goodbye to people. It would have been just the family you were living with, if they were even there. So it was basically prepare to be uprooted completely and just leave everything. Thankfully, that didn't end up working out. Baptist Mid-Mission didn't end up getting us out that night. And then we spent the next 6 weeks pretty much in quarantine. We think it's pretty bad here in the U.S., but there in Peru it was much worse. You couldn't leave your house. There was mandatory curfews from 7 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night. Then when they started letting up, it was the men could leave the house Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the women could leave the house Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So they were really cutting things down. Basically, all the buses were shut down. It was insane. Then at the end of the week, we finally get tickets to go out on a private chartered flight through an organization in Florida. So we travel to another part of town, which is hard to do because you have to pay a special taxi that has to have a special license and all these things because of Corona. So we travel to this other part of the town. We're waiting in line to get on buses to take us to the airport so we can leave. So we get to where we're almost on the bus, and then they say the flight has been postponed till tomorrow. So we're like, oh no, what are we going to do? Some 300 people that were there were in total panic. All of the hotels are closed. All of the restaurants are closed. All of the taxis have gone home for the day because it's past curfew. Nobody could go anywhere. Thankfully, the ARRIBA students, we were able to find a hotel that was open, that was only a few blocks away. So we walked down to this hotel. We didn't have any food. We hadn't eaten all day. One of the ladies from the embassy was very kind, and she knew somebody that was close by, and they brought us some food. Again, complete providence of God. Working through that, we hadn't eaten since that morning because we had to leave early in the morning to get to the bus station. So we make it to the hotel, and we're just honestly praising God for the fact that we were able to eat. The next morning, we get up, we walk back down to the bus station, and we wait in line. We get on the buses. We travel all the way to the airport. We get all of our paperwork filled out. They take our bags. They load our bags on the airplane. And then somebody comes and says, the flight has been delayed again. At this point, everybody is freaking out. What's going on? We're all sitting in the buses at the airport. They're like, all right, everybody get off the bus and go find your bag, which is in a big pile of bags that we just pulled off the airplane. And we're taking you back to that bus station. Everybody's like, wait, what? So we made it to go back. On our way back toward the bus station, we were able to call again, make reservations at that very same hotel. Again, providence of God that hotel wasn't jam-packed again. And come to find out, it was the military leader of the base of the airline there. He did not receive a list of everyone who was on the plane until about 2 hours before, and he requested it like the day before, so he decided to cancel it or postpone it. So it was one man that decided to postpone it and nearly got us trapped in there for even longer. But the next day, finally, we went through the whole process again, and we did make it back to Miami. Made it back to Miami, stayed the night, and then we left the next morning on our separating flights. That was in a whole what I did the whole year. I'm just going to quickly touch on some highlights. What were my responsibilities at the church? The first half, I was basically just attendance. I couldn't really speak to a lot of people. I was trying to encourage people where I could. But as soon as the class section was over, the first 6 months, I was immediately thrust straight into teaching a young teens class, pretty much for guys. So I was teaching every Sunday. I was able to preach while we were there in Peru at least one time. I played guitar for meetings. I was at kids club and youth group pretty much every week, faithfully playing guitar, leading music, helping out in any way I could. One of my main purposes there was to interact and encourage and uplift the church people. I also did a lot of serving and helping in organizations. I helped a lot in the building and the construction of the upstairs for the church. So I was very, very involved. Every day it was doing something in the church, or it was preparing a lesson to teach in church, or it was spending time with my Peruvian family. Some of the most important things I would say I learned during this time was love. Love needs to be my motivation, our motivation for everything we do in life. If we can figure out love, the rest will come more easily. The greatest commandment is to love God and love others. And that was something that really stood out to me in the camps, in my time in Chinchil, was if I choose to put myself last and I choose to put others first, and I choose to love them as Christ loved me and gave himself for me, then I can be a blessing to them. And it's not necessarily that I'm being the blessing, but that Christ is using me to be a blessing to those people. And it's also amazing to see that when you show that love is reciprocated and you receive just as big of a blessing. The other thing I learned is patience is a virtue. When you're trying to learn a new language, living with people you don't understand, working with people that can be very frustrating sometimes, patience, and again, goes along with love, are so strong. If you show patience, other people will be more patient with you. I also learned a proper usage of time. When you're in a foreign culture, when you're a missionary, when you're, I imagine, a pastor, you have to be very specific on how you use your time. You have to be very careful. You have to be well thought out. And I definitely grew in how to prepare, how to be prepared, and what to prepare, and all of that. And I kind of want to end here. I'll show a couple highlights. This is the room we were in. We call this the ARRIBA Center. This is the classroom that we always sat in, the professor there up front. Behind us was a kitchen. We cooked our own food, our own lunch every day. My daily schedule there, our first professor. And then this is the ARRIBA team there at the wedding. This is Glacial Lake I got to swim in. I want to end here by saying thank you, Open Door. I was talking about love and patience and proper use of time, but one thing that really stands out to me is the love I've received here from Open Door. It's pretty amazing to think of the power of God in my life, but from you. I thought about this church, my church family here, a lot, because I was constantly reminded of your prayers, of your giving, of your thoughts of me every day. And until you have either gone in the mission field or you have received a blessing like that, it's hard for me to even express what it feels like. It's almost like a burden. I have this heavy burden, but it's not really a burden. It's your love. And I feel it around me constantly while I was there, constantly thinking of you, constantly being reminded of your gifts, your giving. And I just want to thank you so much for that. I wasn't really good about sending out emails and letting everybody know what was going on. But I want to express now. Thank you so much for your giving. Thank you to everyone who gave financially and prayerfully. There's so many times over this year that I thought, wow, I can tell people are praying for me. And there's so many times I've been so thankful for your giving. I really can't express it enough. Thank you. And with that is the end of my presentation. I went a little over, but I will turn it over to Pastor David.
Appreciated that Caleb said he realized he went over there not to see what this experience would do for him, but rather what God would do through him for other people. And that is missions. That is all of our missions, to tell the story of Jesus Christ. Let's just sing one stanza, if we could, Megan, of I love to tell the story. Tell me the story of Jesus. Appreciate that, Caleb. Before we depart, as you head out there, there's going to be on the pedestal for you a policy that we'll discuss and vote on regarding the coronavirus and a procedure for that. Now, me and the deacons prayed about this, put this together over a lot of discussion, thought, and prayer. We know a lot more now than when this all started in March. The thing to do in March was to do exactly what we did, shut down until we get a handle on what in the world we were dealing with, because it was so new. And now we've done a lot. Brian is exceptionally helpful because he has so much intel into what's going on statistics and things like that in our state, and especially in our counties. So our objective is this in putting this policy together. The objective is not to try to please everybody. That's impossible. The objective is really to honor the Lord. Honor the Lord, number one, by being good stewards of His church and how we meet, and to make sure we do meet when it is safe to do so. Number two, to be good stewards of each other, to look out for one another. That's what we kept in mind, okay? So this policy is really short. This policy was not written with the idea of trying to cover every possible situation. I don't recommend that in writing a policy. To try to do that results in a lengthy policy. And lengthy policies have two drawbacks. Number one, they're really hard to follow. The longer a policy is, the more difficult it is to obey and heed to. And number two, lengthy policies entrap and snare and limit the leadership from making decisions when the unknown or things that cannot be anticipated happen. Okay? So short policies don't limit decision-making when things come up that nobody foresaw. This policy has really one objective, just one. It is to lay out the criteria for which Open Door will close due to the coronavirus. Okay? That's all it is. It's not a policy about how we will operate while we are open, as much as it is a policy on under the conditions on which we will not be open. All right? And here's what it is. It says it's really two criteria under which we will close church. Number one, should a regular attending member or non-member be diagnosed with COVID who has been at church, we will cease services for a minimum of 14 days. So we can see what happens with the rest of our congregation. Okay, that means a minimum of 2 Sundays and 2 Wednesdays. And of course, the facilities are sanitized every week anyway, but especially so in that event. Should any of you be diagnosed with COVID, don't let that part of the policy keep you from letting us know. We need to know this. Should be no embarrassment or shame. Okay, we want to pray for each other. And so if you get this nasty disease, this nasty virus, we need to know to pray for you. We care about you. Okay, and then it lets us know what to do then to make sure we continue to be safe. So that's the first criteria. And the second criteria is coming from the information we're being given on 4 counties. Okay, we'll monitor the confirmed COVID cases in the counties that affect us the most. Madison, of course, Onondaga, Cortland, and Chenango. Right? We monitor those regularly. Brian's on top of those. And if at any given time the number of confirmed active cases in any one of those counties reaches 1%, we will cease holding church services until it drops below 1%. Okay? That means any one county. Maybe Madison County's not at 1%, but if Onondaga reaches 1% of current active cases, we will close, okay, until that drops. To put that in perspective, thus far, last time we checked the statistics, none of those counties has reached 1% of total cases since this whole thing began. The total number of cases any of those counties has is still under 1% of the county's population. So if any of those counties reaches 1% at one time, comparatively speaking, that's quite a number of cases. We believe that is a time to close down until it gets under control. That's it. That's the 2 criteria. The policy also says that while we do hold services under these current conditions like we have now, we're still going to encourage people who are not feeling well, please stay at home. Encourage the elderly and those whose health could be compromised. Stay at home. Watch the online services. We sanitize the facilities, that sort of thing. But we're not putting that in a procedure. We want that to be up to the leadership to work together to decide when to do that. So that's our benchmark for when we close church. Your benchmark may be different, and that's okay. This is just where we're coming from. And so when we come to meet and vote on this, you take this home, you pray about it, and then we'll have a meeting. Any changes you would like to see, we ask that you come to the meeting and very specifically state how you would like it to be worded. We'll have the policy up on the screen, okay? We'll do it just like we do the annual budget. Before we vote on the annual budget, we discuss it and make changes as we go. Same thing with this. You state exactly how you'd like to be different. We'll type it in, and then every change must be approved by majority vote. We'll vote on it. If the vote carries, the change remains. If it doesn't, it doesn't. On we go until we've exhausted all such discussion and changes, and then, only then, will we vote to approve of the policy, right? And it may be the type of policy that we have to implement again and again, or hopefully we never implement the policy. That would be ideal, wouldn't it? Okay, now, this, as I said, no matter what we do, this policy cannot please everybody. As a matter of fact, with something like this, likely nobody will get everything he or she wants in this. The way we have it written right here is exactly how the deacons and I want it, but I really doubt it's going to stay that way. All right? Not everybody gets what you want. In fact, probably nobody will, but that's okay, folks, because this is not a matter of godliness, okay? We can all be godly and maintain unity by obeying the principles of Scripture. This is a matter of wisdom, and we're going to differ on what's wise and what's not. That's all right. We work together, and whatever passes, we adhere to. Okay, so take one of these on the way out. Take it home. Father, thank you again for the challenges, even the hardships, and sometimes just nothing more than the inconveniences of COVID-19. Thank you for growing Caleb through that whole experience and wrapping up his year-long ministry by dealing with the challenge of COVID-19 and how it put him in some very uncomfortable situations. And yet, Lord, we're thankful he's here with us today and that much closer to you than when he left. Lord, may we just continue to love the story of Jesus Christ and tell it, proclaim it, preach it, live it. May we grow in our spiritual health regardless of what our physical health does. May we grow in our unity because we are, after all, your people. And you are our strength. And may we find our joy in the strength of the Lord. In Christ's name, amen. God bless. Hope to see you tonight at Sunday school.